The lock clicked clean and final, and on my security feed I watched almost 100 strangers in nice clothes pile up behind my gate like they'd hit a traffic jam on a private driveway. Melissa Hartman, president of the Cedar Ridge Estates, HOA, self-appointed queen of everyone's business, started pounding the metal like it owed her money, screaming, "I have rights, open this gate." What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that one dusty document my grandfather signed 60 years ago was about to turn her whole little empire into confetti. I'm Ethan Carter, early 30s, the guy who used to design parts for airplanes until my company restructured me right out of a paycheck. And if you've ever been laid off, you know the special kind of panic that sits in your throat like a rock. I was already drowning in that panic when a lawyer called and told me my grandfather left me a piece of land 40 acres on the water, a cabin, a dock, a stretch of shoreline so quiet you could hear fish jump at dawn. It wasn't some fancy resort place either. It was real rough around the edges, cedar boards that creaked when you walked sun-bleached chairs on the porch, the kind of property that feels like family even if you haven't set foot on it in years. I drove out there with a box of tools in the back seat and a head full of "okay, Ethan, don't screw this up," thinking maybe I could fix the cabin up, breathe for the first time in months, maybe rent it out someday, maybe just survive. The first morning I woke up on that porch with coffee in my hand, looking out over the lake, I thought for a stupid second that life might actually let me have something nice. And then Melissa Hartman's white SUV rolled up like a threat with a leather interior. She didn't knock like a normal person. She walked right onto my porch in sunglasses the size of dinner plates, a clipboard tucked against her chest, smiling the way people smile when they've already decided you're wrong. "Mr. Carter," she said, like she'd rehearsed my name in front of a mirror. "Melissa Hartman, HOA president. Welcome to Cedar Ridge Estates." I actually laughed because I thought she must be lost. "I'm not in an HOA," I told her. "This property isn't part of your neighborhood." Her smile didn't move. "You may not be a member," she said, tapping her pen like it was a gavel, "but you're inside our community influence. And we have established usage of that lake." Established usage, like it was a Starbucks table she'd been holding with her purse. I felt my stomach tighten. "It's my lakefront," I said. "My land, my dock." She leaned in just a little, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. "We have events," she said. "We have standards. We have dues. And we have a schedule. Cedar Ridge is hosting an engagement party next month. On the water. You'll cooperate or you'll find out how expensive it is to be difficult." And there it was, my first real look at the HOA machine. It wasn't vague. It wasn't Karen said something rude. It was direct. Fees, impact charges, compliance demands, threats dressed up as community standards. She slapped a folder on my porch table like she was serving me court papers. Inside were printed violations that made no sense, claims that I was running an illegal vacation rental, that my unapproved exterior lighting disturbed neighbors, that my unpermitted dock structure was a hazard. I stared at the pages, then back at her. "I got here yesterday," I said. "There's no rental, there's no guests." Melissa's pen clicked again. "Then this should be easy," she said sweetly. "Sign the acknowledgement, pay the initial community access fee, and we'll coordinate for the party." "No," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I expected. For the first time her smile actually slipped. "Excuse me." "No," I repeated. "You're not using my property, and I'm not paying your HOA anything." Melissa tilted her head and looked past me into the cabin like she was taking inventory. "You're new," she said. "You're stressed. I can tell. This neighborhood handles problems. Effectively." Then she turned and walked back to her SUV like she'd just left a polite welcome basket instead of a threat. I stood there with my coffee going cold, watching her drive away, and the quiet I loved a minute ago suddenly felt like something you could get hunted in. The next week proved she wasn't bluffing. I started getting letters, real ones with a law firm letterhead, not just some HOA newsletter. They accused me of violating community ordinances, demanded I pay monthly dues in exchange for access coordination, and warned me about liens. Liens. On property, I'd just inherited property I could barely afford to keep as it was. I called the number on the letter and told the receptionist calmly, "This is a mistake. I'm not part of your HOA." She put me on hold long enough to make me feel like I was being punished. Then a man came on the line and spoke to me like I was a child. "Mr. Carter," he said, "cooperating now will reduce your exposure later." Reduce my exposure. Like I was radioactive. Then the real pressure started because Melissa Hartman didn't just have a clipboard, she had people. One morning at 6 a.m., while I was standing in the kitchen in sweatpants making coffee, headlights hit my windows. A knock, hard and official. When I opened the door, a sheriff's deputy stood there with his hand resting near his belt like I was about to pull a weapon out of a cereal box. "Ethan Carter?" he asked. "Yeah." "Deputy Ryan Hartman," he said, and the last name landed like a punch. "We got a call for a wellness check. Anonymous report said you might be unstable." Unstable. Because I said no to a party. I stared at him, then at the patrol car idling on my driveway, and I felt heat climb up my neck. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm drinking coffee. That's the emergency." Ryan's eyes flicked over my shoulder into the cabin. "Any weapons in the home?" he asked. "No." "Any illegal activity?" "No." He held my gaze a second too long, then shrugged like he was disappointed. "Just doing my job," he said, but there was something in his tone like he enjoyed the idea that I couldn't tell where job ended and HOA started. After that, every little thing became a report. A county inspector showed up about septic runoff. A noise complaint came in while I was running a power drill at noon. A stranger drove slowly past my gate every night around 10 headlights, sweeping the dock like they were searching for something. One morning I found my dock railing bent inward like someone had tried to pry something loose. The next day, my mailbox had been spray-painted with the word "trespasser" in sloppy red letters, like a warning, like a dare. I scrubbed it off until my hands smelled like chemicals in anger. I told myself over and over, "Don't react. That's what they want." But the truth is, I was reacting inside. I'd sit on the porch at night staring out at the dark water and feel this sick, crawling doubt. Who did I think I was? A laid-off engineer with a half-renovated cabin standing up to an HOA that had lawyers and connections and, apparently, deputies with matching last names. The scariest part wasn't Melissa yelling. The scariest part was realizing she didn't need to yell. She could make my life annoying, expensive, and exhausting until I gave up just to breathe again. And I almost did. I'm not proud of it. But there was a night around week 3 when I sat at the kitchen table with the latest letter spread out in front of me, and I actually typed "sell land fast cash" into my phone like a coward. I thought maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm the outsider. Maybe the lake really has been community for years, and I'm the jerk who swooped in and ruined everyone's fun. I even heard my own voice in my head, the one that hates conflict, whispering, "Ethan, just cooperate. Just let them have the stupid party. Pay the fees, stop the bleeding, get back to your life." Then I looked at the letter again and saw the number at the bottom, an initial community access fee that was basically a month of my unemployment checks, and something in me snapped quiet but solid. This wasn't about community. This was about control. So I did what I always do when I'm scared. I got methodical. If Melissa wanted to play dirty, fine. I wasn't going to win by shouting. I was going to win by documenting. I drove into town and bought cameras, real ones, not the cheap junk that dies in the rain. I mounted them along the driveway, at the dock, at the porch, pointed right at the gate line. I put up a bright, unmissable sign, "Private property. No trespassing." And because I'm petty in a very specific American way, I added all activity recorded. The next night at 11:47 p.m., one of my cameras caught a teenage kid in a hoodie creeping up to my mailbox with a spray can. He looked straight at the lens, no mask, no shame, and sprayed the same word again, "trespasser." Then he walked back down the road laughing and hopped into a white SUV that looked an awful lot like Melissa's. I watched the footage 3 times. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The next morning, I printed a still frame, his face crisp timestamp visible, and drove it to Melissa's address because, yes, I had it. HOA presidents put their information everywhere, like they're running for office. She opened the door in a silk robe like she'd been expecting a delivery. I held out the paper. "Morning, Melissa," I said. "You might want to see what happened on my property last night." She glanced at it barely a second, then her eyes narrowed. "That's fake," she said immediately. "Photoshop. You're targeting my family." I couldn't help it. I let out this short, humorless laugh. "Lady, I said I can barely afford groceries right now. You think I'm out here mastering Photoshop for sport?" Her face hardened. "You're harassing me," she said. And then she leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume again, sharp and expensive. "You don't understand how this works," she whispered. "Work with the HOA if you want access restored." Access restored. To my own property. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just pressuring me. She was implying she could cut me off. I drove back to the cabin with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, rage and fear twisting together. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked through the cabin, through the cluttered garage, through boxes my grandfather had left behind, and I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe comfort, maybe a distraction, but I found a metal lockbox tucked behind old fishing gear. Inside were documents wrapped in plastic yellowed at the edges, the kind of paperwork you don't touch unless you respect it. Deeds, surveys, and one file labeled in my grandfather's handwriting, water rights. I sat on the concrete floor and opened it like I was defusing a bomb. The document inside was older than the HOA by decades. It spelled out in plain, boring legal language that my family held private rights to the shoreline access and lake use on that parcel, and that no association, neighborhood, or third party could claim community usage without a recorded easement and written consent. In other words, Melissa's favorite phrase, established usage, didn't mean a damn thing. I felt something lift off my chest so fast it made me dizzy. But then the engineer part of my brain kicked in again because paper is powerful, sure, but only if you know how to use it. I called a lawyer the next morning and not some random guy from a billboard. I called Diane Ross, a woman a neighbor recommended with the kind of reverence people reserve for surgeons and storm shelters. She listened to my story without interrupting, then asked one question that made my stomach drop. "Do you have any reason to believe law enforcement has been used to pressure you?" "A deputy named Hartman showed up," I said. "Wellness check, noise complaints, inspections." Diane went quiet for a second, then said, "Ethan, this isn't just HOA drama. This is a coordinated pressure campaign. And coordinated pressure campaigns fall apart when you drag them into daylight." She told me to get the water rights document certified, to pull county records to request HOA communications to stop speaking to Melissa without witnesses, and most importantly, don't swing first. Let her hang herself. The next discovery was almost funny in a dark way. In the same lockbox, there was a survey map from the 70s, and when Diane's survey guy laid it over current property lines, we found something that made my mouth go dry. The access road Cedar Ridge used the road everyone in that neighborhood drove every day, crossed a strip of my land. Not a wide strip, but enough. And there was no easement recorded, which meant for years they'd been treating my land like a public road without permission, and their entire little community access routine depended on nobody questioning it. Suddenly I understood the desperation behind Melissa's threats. She didn't want a party. She wanted control of my shoreline because if I pushed back, if I demanded legal clarity, her HOA could lose the illusion of power it ran on. So we built a gate, a real one. Steel posts sunk deep keypad entry, remote control from inside the cabin cameras aimed straight down the driveway. We put it right where my property line started, right where the community quietly became mine. Diane warned me, "They'll test you, they'll threaten you. They'll try to bait you into looking unreasonable. Don't take the bait." And then she paused and added almost casually, "When are they planning that engagement party?" "Next month," I said. On the water. Perfect, she replied. Let's give them a stage. In the days leading up to the party, the HOA's pressure went from annoying to frantic. Melissa called from blocked numbers. Letters showed up taped to my gate, handwritten this time, like threats in a movie, "You can't stop us." Neighborhood property. I didn't respond. I just saved everything. I recorded every interaction. I kept my voice calm, even when my skin felt like it wanted to crawl off my body. There were moments I still doubted myself. Moments I stood by the window watching headlights slow near my driveway and thought, "Ethan, you're playing with people who don't care about the rules. What if they burn the cabin? What if they hurt you?" And then I'd remember Melissa's words, "Work with the HOA if you want access restored," and I'd feel that quiet snap again. No, I'm done being scared in my own home. The morning of the party arrived bright and smug, like the world didn't realize it was about to witness a meltdown. I watched from my living room as a parade of SUVs and sedans rolled down the road toward my property. Music thumping faintly through closed windows, people laughing, carrying gifts, dressed like they were heading to a venue. Because in Melissa's head, my lake was a venue she could book. They reached the gate and stopped. Confusion rippled through the line of cars. One guy in a suit stepped out and tried the keypad like it was broken. Another woman leaned out her window and asked, "Is this the right place?" Then Melissa's SUV came barreling up the line horn, blaring like she could bully physics. She got out in a pale dress hair, perfect face already tense, and marched straight to my gate. She didn't knock on the keypad. She didn't call politely. She started pounding the metal with both fists, screaming, "Open this gate! Ethan, you can't do this! This is community property!" The cameras caught everything. Her manic eyes, the spit flying when she shouted the way the guests started pulling out their phones, because honestly, Americans love a spectacle. I took a breath slow and pressed the button that kept the lock engaged. The click echoed in my head like a promise. I walked outside calm on purpose, like I had all the time in the world, and Melissa saw me and practically vibrated with rage. Finally, she shrieked, "Open it! We have a reservation. We have vendors. We have a reservation," I repeated, letting the sarcasm show just enough. "On my property. It's the community lake," she snapped. "We've used it for years. I have rights." "You have opinions," I said, and a few guests actually laughed, which only made her face twist harder. "This is harassment," she hissed. "You're ruining an engagement party. Everyone will know what kind of man you are." "Good," I said, and I reached into a folder I was holding because, yes, I walked out there with a folder like the most boring superhero alive and pulled out a certified copy of the water rights document. "Let's make sure everyone knows," I said. "This lakefront is private, protected by water rights issued decades before your HOA existed. There is no easement. There is no community reservation. There is just you trespassing with an audience." Melissa didn't even look at the paper. She just screamed louder. "That's fake. He's lying. Open the gate." And that's when the second car arrived, an unmarked county vehicle. Marjorie Price, the county clerk, stepped out with a calmness that felt like ice water. She held her own folder stamped and sealed. "Melissa Hartman." She asked like she already knew the answer. Melissa turned startled, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear. "Yes," she snapped. "Who are you, Marjorie Price?" the clerk said. "This document is on record. Mr. Carter's water rights and property boundaries are valid. Your association has no claim here." The guests started murmuring now, the kind of murmuring that sounds like a crowd realizing they've been lied to. Melissa's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find the right threat fast enough. "This is a setup," she said, voice cracking. He's targeting the community." And then, like a cherry on top, a process server walked up, quiet, efficient, and handed Melissa a thick envelope. "Melissa Hartman," he said. "You've been served." She looked down at the papers like they were poison. "What is this?" she demanded. "Complaint for harassment, trespass, falsification of documents, and interference with property rights." Diane's voice called out from behind me, because of course Diane was there, not smiling, just watching like a judge. Melissa spun toward her, eyes wild. "You can't! This is Ryan!" she screamed, whipping her head around like her deputy in the family could appear on command. Instead, two uniformed officers approached from the street, different department, different faces, the kind of calm that means they don't care who you think you are. "Ma'am," one officer said, "we need you to step away from the gate." "This is my event," Melissa shrieked. "I have rights. He's stealing our lake." The officer didn't even flinch. "Ma'am," he repeated, "turn around, hands behind your back." For a split second the whole world held its breath. Melissa Hartman, HOA President Threat Machine, Queen of Compliance, looked around at the guests filming her at the papers in her hands at the locked gate that wouldn't obey her, and her face did something I'll never forget. It crumpled. Not into shame, into rage and disbelief, like reality itself had betrayed her. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, almost like a child. Then the handcuffs clicked sharp metallic final, and her voice came back as a scream as they led her toward the patrol car, still shouting about her rights, while the people she'd invited watched her get folded into consequences. I didn't cheer. I didn't wave. I just stood there behind my gate, heart pounding, feeling the strange calm that comes when someone finally stops pushing because they've hit a wall they can't move. Paper beats power.